This is the Connecticut Water Guy Hour. And now here's your host, Paul, your Connecticut Water Guy.
Oh, hi, I'm Paul, your Connecticut Water Guy, and welcome back to the Connecticut Water Guy Show. This is the show where we talk about, as you might imagine, water. We like it to be interesting, informative, and life-changing. So this is 4 episodes in, and just to give everybody a recap. So I'm Paul, and I am with Advanced Water Systems, a Connecticut dealer here in the Richmond area, over at 805 East 9 Mile Road, Highland Springs, if you want to stop in and visit my team. We have dedicated our lives to fixing water. That's the water that comes into your house, not the water that leaves your house. But you can visit us. You can call us at 877-60-WATER. We specialize in whole house filtration, purification, softening, as well as drinking water systems. So I just usually skip that part accidentally right in the beginning, but that's who we are, who I am. And in the last couple of episodes, we talked about where your water comes from, whether it's a well, a community well, or city water. We talked a little bit about chlorine and the problems with that, as well as hardness in the water. And then we moved into a whole episode dedicated just to drinking water, which basically was a long explanation of the benefits of purification when compared to basic filtration. And then last week we covered pathogens, which was the virus, bacteria, and parasites that are in water, and it may not be there today, but you never know what the future may bring. So I've got, again, my name is Paul, and we've got Ethan here with me.
Hey, everybody.
And this is kind of a weird episode because it's something we don't really deal with too terribly much out in the field, but we do get, especially this week for some reason, we've been getting a lot of folks that have called up asking about drinking water systems because they've got concerns with landfills, and rightfully so. So we did a whole bunch of digging because at the end of the day, I try to nerd out for a few days of pulling together some accurate information and then trying to give it to you, to everybody listening here in a fun way, where I don't bore you to tears, but you learn something, and hopefully you make some choices that can help your life. So drinking water is the most important type of water that comes into your house. I like to say that the utility water, that's the water that your house drinks. That's important, obviously, but you can always get, and if they get messed up, you could always get new toilets, new shower doors, new countertops, new water heaters, new dishwashers, new refrigerators, bathtubs, washing machines, faucets, etc. But you can't always get back your health. So the big question that we were getting primarily came out of the Charles City area, but it caused us to kind of dig in and get some information from pretty much landfills in general, because there's a lot of concern about how do landfills impact the quality of the water that we actually do use for drinking. So a little bit about landfills. So landfills have this stuff called leachate, which I like to call landfill juice. It's basically, a landfill it's a big pile of debris, garbage, household garbage that sits in a sometimes pretty massive area. Like I said, the Charles City one that we're going to talk about specifically, that at last number I had on that one is that it was active on 629 acres. So these landfills are obviously pretty big, and yeah, they basically take all sorts of household garbage. It's just horrible when you really realize all the stuff that goes into the garbage bags, food waste and pharmaceuticals like antibiotics and prescriptions and all
Lord knows what else is being thrown in those bags. And
Oh,
it's all
yeah.
being tossed into that landfill. So
Absolutely. Yeah. If it fits in a bag, it ends up getting thrown out in the trash and people never give it a second thought.
yeah,
But yeah, some of those pharmaceutical things, they're really bad. Obviously, antibiotics for one thing. You if you take too much antibiotics, you can actually build up resistance. Some bacteria and viruses that become resistant to those things. So, without even trying to be antibiotic resistant, you might be just from bringing that stuff in through your water and kind of constantly dosing yourself. But yeah, the endocrine system is really impacted heavily by that kind of pollution. But the leachate, the landfill juice, that is something that if you can imagine a gigantic mountain of garbage, and as this garbage is decomposing and getting rained on, and groundwater and surface waters are kind of getting into the mix, you end up with this liquid, toxic, horrible stuff that just terrible.
yeah. And I mean, when you think about it, like a lot of vegetables and stuff, I know those will, when they decompose, they start oozing this vegetable juice.
Yes.
It's like gross vegetable juice. So like anything else that's in those bags probably does that as well, and it all just kind of conglomerates into one nasty what'd you say, landfill juice?
Landfill juice. Yeah. I don't think I'll be able to market that and have any success, but it was catchy. So the landfill juice. Now I'm going to call it landfill juice. It's the leachate escapes these barriers that have been put in place, and it goes into the groundwater. There had been some things put in place to try to prevent the seepage past the barriers into the groundwater. For example, there were some federal regulations back in 1993 that from that point on, it requires any active landfills to have a liner underneath them to try to minimize the amount of landfill juice that ends up going down into the soil and eventually down into the groundwater, which everything goes down. And the groundwater is, of course, where people tap into to have, if they have wells, whether that's a private well or a community well, or in a lot of cases, some of these city water systems can actually be supplemented by groundwater. But either way, it is not good when you have leachate finding its way down into the groundwater. So in 93 required that liner. So as of 2020, 3 years ago, Virginia actually had, interesting fact, had 45 active landfills. There was one up by D.C. in Fauquier County that was closed down initially because it didn't have a liner back in 93. But it reopened in 2001. They threw some dirt over it in the meantime, but they basically said nobody's going to use it. But then they reopened it in 2001 because they started running out of space. But they only opened it for construction debris, like drywall and blocks of concrete and stuff like that. So they figured that wouldn't continue to contribute to any problems that it would have. And then that one, 2020, that's when it actually maxed out. They put a million cubic yards of construction debris into that thing. And then in 2020, they capped it. So for 19 years, rain and surface water kept making this leachate, along with all the trash and garbage that was sitting in there just decomposing. So it was just a nasty soup for like 2 decades. So they actually, and it's fascinating once I started digging into this, they're actually pumping that stuff out and hauling it away, and they're still doing that. Even though this landfill is closed, they still have to try to keep up with all the landfill juice that's coming out of it. So they opened another landfill up there in 96, but the funny part about it is, of course, that one meets all those 1993 regulations that have to have the liner down. But that one filled up, and And in 2017, just 6 years ago, they started shipping their trash down to Richmond, down in our area. So it's pretty crazy. They were still dealing with the shutdown of that one that filled up, and then they closed it when it filled up again. And the second one that they opened up, that one also filled up. So they're running on empty at this point.
Yeah, sounds like it.
Yeah, it was pretty messed up because they actually they closed the second one prematurely. They didn't fill it up. I think they were some ridiculous number here of being. Oh, I have it in one of those pieces of paper, but it was something like 450 cubic yards. It could still fit in it, but it wasn't full. But they just stopped accepting waste. So because it wasn't full, they didn't have to close because of being full. They closed it just because they decided to close it, and they shipped their stuff down to Richmond. So why this is all interesting is because they were trying to still deal with all the financial impact of the first one that they still have. They're still, to this day, pumping out all this nasty leachate out of it. And then their second one fills up. So where I'm going with all this is that now we've got trash coming down into our area because we have more area that apparently is better to dump trash in. So it's not just up there in Fauquier County, which is kind of west of D.C., but now we've got, I'm sure a lot of folks have heard about the mega, all the trash that they're bringing down from Jersey and all the upper East Coast cities because they don't have room either. But they are, they're definitely shipping it down here. So over in Sussex County, which is over east, there was a landfill opened up in 2016 by Atlantic Waste Disposal. And that one, it was kind of funny because this one was actually, had been open for a while. And it started in 2016, it started releasing its leachate. And this leachate was, since it was built with the specs that it had to have with the liner, so it's now catching this juice. And it's diverting it over into like a collection area where they can pump it into trucks and take it somewhere safe to try to get rid of it. Well, it started overflowing all the holding ponds. So when your landfill juice is coming out so heavily that you overflow your holding ponds, guess what happens? It goes into the swamp, which is surrounding the landfill. So now the swamp has landfill juice in it. And the Nottoway River is right there. So this stuff ends up, long story short, going into the Nottoway River.
Right.
Just crazy.
It's one train wreck after another, it sounds like.
Yeah, and it's related to water because, as we might imagine, we like the city water. A lot of the cities, they can't rely on wells to suck up enough water to take care of all the population. So most of the big cities actually pull their water out of rivers. So if you start polluting those rivers, you've got to have some special processes in place to be able to deal with all of those horrific contaminants in that toxic soup that's coming out. Yeah. So I talked a little earlier about the Charles City one. That's the one that's really getting a lot of attention for some reason this week in our office. But there were some high cancer rates over in that area. It's horrible. That one was actually opened up. That landfill was opened up in 1990. And again, this one is real close to a river. It's actually only 1 mile from the Chickahominy River, which is not that far.
Yeah.
And that's important because this is one of the most active landfills that we've got in close proximity to us. And that Chickahominy River is where the city of Newport News gets much of its water out of. So kind of like I said, the cities, they suck their water supplies out of the rivers and treat it and send it on to the residents. But the sad part about it is you got this massive landfill, and only actually less than 1% of the total stuff that's being put into it is actually from the residents of Charles City County. So that's how much. Not over 99% of it is being imported from other areas. Kind of crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a rundown real fast on landfills, and they're a problem because obviously this toxic soup, you don't want to get into the rivers, you don't want to go in anywhere. Ideally, you just don't want to have it, but it's impossible to really contain it 100%. And so they've tried to triage those pollutants. They've come up with a list of which ones they want to keep an eye on based on their relative toxicity. But the problem is, you've got pharmaceuticals out there that are constantly changing. So, and they don't really know, which one is most toxic until you do studies on it. So it's definitely a very dynamic environment there. All right, so the big question is, how much leachate or landfill juice are we really talking about? And the answer, just to put it in perspective, is just a typical landfill in Vermont, for example. The Coventry landfill makes 9.5 million gallons a year. That's all literally the nastiest, most toxic juice you could imagine.
Wow.
Yeah, that's scary.
Yeah.
And the current treatment, because they take the stuff out, they take it over to the water treatment plant, and they treat it like it's sewage. But they don't have current treatment methods designed to reduce some of these new things that they're really scared about, like PFAS, for example. But anyway, that's just an intro of landfills in your drinking water. If you want to learn more, you can give us a call at 877-60-WATER. Or you can visit us at ConnecticutRichmond.com. I'm getting a lot of feedback from folks about our YouTube channel, Connecticut Richmond. We've got some cool videos up there. Just heard a couple people actually today talking about that. How informative some of those were, like the T-test and the chlorine example. But we're going to take a quick break, but stick around. We're going to be right back with more of the Water Guy Show. Welcome back. In case you've just tuned in, this is the Water Guy Show, and I'm Paul, your Connecticut water guy. Before the break, we were talking about landfills. It was we were talking dirty. It was some interesting stuff, primarily all based around the health impacts of landfills. Now, obviously, landfills are a necessary thing. Everybody just takes it for granted that you collect your trash, it gets taken out and taken somewhere. Nobody really puts too terribly much thought into where it goes, and probably most importantly, most people almost don't care. They just want it gone.
Yeah.
But these landfills that are out there, like I said, there's 45 of them. As of 2020 in Virginia. So there's not a whole bunch of these things, but they fill up, and as the garbage is deteriorating, decomposing, and breaking down, it's creating that landfill juice. The leachate is the technical name for it. But this stuff is something you don't want it anywhere near the water that you're going to be putting inside your body.
Oh, yeah.
Nasty stuff. And there's an awful lot of wells, folks on wells over in Charles City County, for example. But this really impacts everybody that's listening, because well water is just, you're drawing your water from a hole in the ground, and it can come from multiple different directions, and you just have no idea what might be seeping down into it.
Yeah.
And it's kind of scary. But the Charles City one, it was almost scary, because we were watching. piqued our interest, obviously. So we were pulling up as much information as we could on it, and one of them was a news. I think it was NBC 12. Sounds familiar.
One of them.
Yeah, one of the major ones, and it was actually a lot of just a whole video article on this, and it showed folks boiling the water. Yeah, and that's what I really wanted to kind of make sure that I covered today, because I see this a lot where folks think that boiling water is a magical fix.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that it is a magical fix if you're in the woods. With pristine water that you don't have to really worry too much about, pollutants. Where if you're only worried about pathogens like we covered on the last one, boiling will go ahead and kill most of them. Boiling is effective on a lot of the stuff that can get in the water that's a gas, because obviously it's going to boil that stuff out of there. But I love telling stories to people, true stories, because, fact is stranger than fiction sometimes. And I had a customer that it was out east. I don't remember exactly where it was. But, for example, she was the husband. It was a husband and wife, and they were telling me that for their drinking water, they boil their water first, thinking that was going to magically make it better. So it kind of made me ask the obvious question of, where do you boil this? Let me see your process. So she took me over to the stove, and she had one of those tea kettles sitting on there. And this thing, if you've ever been out in, I think it was Kentucky or the western part of the state, and you've been in those caves,
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of what this tea kettle looked like on the outside and on the inside. It was horrific.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and the reason, so like I said, all the boiling does is it kills things that are alive, most of them, and it takes gases out of the water. It doesn't do anything for the stuff that's dissolved in your water, the lead, the arsenic, some of the scary things, which it's even worse, because when you're boiling water, the steam that comes out, that's actually the best water. That's the pure water, and that's going out into the air. So what you're doing is you're actually concentrating what's left in that tea kettle. So I'm going to make this all make sense in a minute, but the EPA, for example, has their MCLs, their maximum contaminant levels, on a whole bunch of different things that are out there. And some of these are primary contaminants where they actually put a limit on there and they can come in and enforce it, like lead. You can have 15 parts per billion. If you hit that number, you've now hit the MCL, and the EPA comes down hard on places that are providing water that exceeds that, like Flint, Michigan, for example. But there's other things like they call them secondary levels and secondary standards. And these they're out there, but they're not enforceable. And basically, it's like a strong recommendation. We'll just put it that way. And they have a strong recommendation if you were to put what we call a TDS monitor, which is a TDS meter, which is a total dissolved solids. It's a real simple thing. You can find them, like the Zero Water Pitcher gives you one for free when you buy one of those. But it's a great indicator of how pure your water is. It doesn't tell you what it is, what's in it. It just gives you a number that makes you realize that, if my water has 10 in it, it's got less stuff in it than somebody's water that has 100 in it. Well, this range can go up ridiculously high. And the EPA has actually made a strong recommendation that you do not drink anything that hits 500 or above. So I remember this one because I think the exact number, it was like 1,200 or 1,500. It was like 2.5, almost 3 times.
Oh my gosh!
So she was boiling it, thinking that it was better, And I remember because that was just the regular, what she was filling the teapot with. And then she still had some water in there from the last time that she had boiled for her husband.
Right.
And it was over 4,000.
Oh my gosh. So it really did concentrate it.
Yes.
Concentrate it then.
Yes. So
Wow.
like kind of like what I said, the steam, which is steam has a 0. Steam is perfectly pure, and once you start pulling out all that liquid into the air, you're concentrating what's left. So I remember it like it was yesterday. The husband turned to the wife and he just said, "Oh my gosh, you've been poisoning me for 20 years." And I didn't know what to say because she had been. She didn't do it intentionally, but yeah, boiling is not the answer. That's the moral of the story. It's good for some things, but purifying that water, you can either boil it and collect the steam and drink that, or the more sensible thing to do would be to have a reverse osmosis system in your kitchen, something that connects to a dedicated drinking water faucet where you can get room temperature water for making coffee, making tea, making mixed flavored drinks for the kids or grandkids. And then our Kinetico K5 system is pretty cool because it's got different accessory ports that we can use for really specialized contaminants like pathogen protection or arsenic and things like that. That some of them just are very tough to remove. But our unit can also be connected to your refrigerator, so you'll never have to buy a fridge filter ever again. You'll have perfect ice. You'll have wonderful cold water. Anyway, that's the best way to get the pure water. And some folks think, oh well, the steam, it doesn't really account for that much. Well, anybody that's ever actually accidentally left a pot boiling, it disappears pretty doggone fast.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's amazing how fast you can, once it starts the boiling process, how that stuff can go up into the air, and next thing you know, you got a scorched pot. So basically, protect your drinking water at all costs and get some sort of drinking water system. Anything at this point, anything is better than nothing. And I mentioned there is one that's out there. That also achieves a very low TDS, that total dissolved solids number, called a zero pitcher. And I'll probably get in trouble for even mentioning them by their name, but that's what they call it. And as far as I know, that's really the only one that's out there. They actually give you a TDS meter with that pitcher, which is great. Something like that. It's a countertop. You put your water in it, and it uses what we call some deionizing resins, which are some special media. It's a fancy way of saying that it's special media that has an attractive nature, and as the water is going through it, it will kind of like magnets. It'll grab a hold of things, literally everything. So if you're in a college dorm situation, an apartment situation where you can't have something, but you want to make sure that you've got good drinking water, the zero pitcher will achieve far better quality water than you'll ever get with like a Brita. And I hate mentioning brand names, like I said, but that's, everybody's familiar with those, so I just mentioned them as a service announcement. But the thing I should warn you about, my nephew actually went off to college, and he of course was asking me, Uncle Paul, what do you recommend? I don't want to drink out of the tap. You've scared the heck out of me. So I told him, I said, go pick up one of the zero pitchers, and they either have a TDS meter built into them, or they give you one separately when you buy the unit. And I said, whatever you do not get rid of that meter. You need to test each batch of water when it's done. Mm-hmm. And he kind of looked at me like, well, geez, that seems like a lot of work. And I'm like, really? You turn it on and you stick it in the water for like a second. It's not that hard.
It's almost an instant reading too.
Literally, it takes in most cases a second at 2 seconds at most. So yeah, it's pretty doggone instant.
Yeah.
But this is important because remember I said that this stuff acts kind of like almost like a super magnet. It just grabs a hold of all these nasty things that are in the water.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it gets to the point where it gets full. And if you don't monitor and all of a sudden it gets to that point and you're not aware of it and you just go ahead and make your coffee out of it, or you fill your flask or your thermos up or your glass and you just guzzle a whole bunch of this water, you may actually be poisoning yourself. So what ends up happening is it loads up and loads up and loads up. And then when it gets full, it starts shedding all of that stuff that it has just accumulated. So you'll see your TDS, and it happens really quick. Because I told my nephew to monitor this, and he gave me the feedback because he's in college, right? He doesn't want to have to buy filters because filters cost money, and there's more important things for money then. But he said, thank goodness you told me that, because it was one day it was fine, and a day or two later, that thing had gone ridiculous and just started dumping all this poison back into the water. So I feel good that my message was able to at least help him. But I know we're in an area that has a lot of college folks that are probably looking for something in the room.
Yeah.
I don't know how many of them are going to be listening to the Boomtown oldies, but we can hope.
There's some people with old souls out there.
Yeah, so, absolutely. Well, if I can help you make some decisions, because we do get calls, and there's a lot of folks that say, look, I'm in an apartment or I'm in a dorm. What do I do? At least hopefully this helps guide you to something. I wouldn't waste my money on a Brita or one of those other just carbon filtered ones. All that is just a glorified fridge filter, which they don't do a doggone thing either. They're designed to pull out gases, kind of like we talked about in that previous episode. But when it comes down to really improving the water quality, they don't do anything significant. They just make you feel better. And anything is better than nothing. But if you're going to do it, just do the zero pitcher. Or as much as I hate bottles, you may want to consider some bottle stand and pick up purified water somewhere and bring it back. Yeah. But that was a whole story just about poisoning somebody from boiling. But the reason I brought all that up is because I saw that on the news that this person was doing that, thinking that it was going to go ahead and fix their water, and I just wanted to make sure that everybody knew that there's definitely limitations on boiling. It's not gonna do anything. It's not gonna do the stuff that you want it to. It's not gonna protect you from landfill juice.
It's actually working backwards, is what it sounds like, pretty much.
Yeah.
You said all the water that they're hoping to get is coming out as steam.
Yeah, they'd be better off trying to inhale the air.
Yeah.
That's pretty crazy. The boiling actually makes your water worse because they put out the boil water advisories. Everybody thinks, that's got to be how you purify and make water better, but it's very focused. They put that advisory out there because they know that you may have been exposed to either higher levels of chlorine or potential pathogens. So in either case, it's good against that, but that's about it. Hopefully some folks have tuned in and you're actually thinking, maybe I need to be a little proactive. And I haven't even talked about a lot of whole house systems. I'm a big health person. I'm not, eccentrically over the top on it or anything like that, but you definitely need to protect your health. I've seen too many people around me and family members actually be impacted by things that if you could change it, you absolutely would. And something as easy as just having a professional drinking water system put in can literally change your life. And we do hear that all the time, that I don't know how I lived without this, but pretty cool. The Connecticut K5 is our reverse osmosis drinking water system. It's our most popular one. our dealership, which has roughly 12 offices down into Georgia. Hopefully it survived the, I don't remember the name of the hurricane that just.
Yeah, I know it.
What's the name of that?
Oh my God.
Adelia or something?
Yeah, it's been all over my social media the past couple of days, and I can't remember the name of it.
It's terrible. Yeah, we were like, you don't even know what anybody's phone number is anymore. You just hit their name. But anyway, out of our 12 offices, I believe in the last 3 or 4 years, we've installed around 9,000 of these units. So it's been very good for us. We have special Boomtown 10% off discount. Just make sure you mention that. It's valid until I change my mind. 877-609-2837, 877-60-WATER. Or you can go on ConnecticutRichmond.com and you can submit some information or do a chat with one of our chat things right away. And we're going to take another quick break, but stick around. We will be right back with more of the Water Guy Show. Welcome back. In case you've just tuned in, this is the Water Guy Show, and I'm Paul, your Connecticut water guy, and being helped out by Ethan, the producer.
Hey, everybody.
All righty. Yeah, before the breaks, we were on this episode, we started off talking about landfills, and really, you'd think landfills and water, there's not a lot of relation there, but we were talking about the landfills having, obviously, as the stuff breaks down, I like to compare this to, I'm sure we've all had one of those trash bags where we just leave it in there for as long as we possibly can to put every little wrapper we possibly could in. And you finally pick it up and you see in the bottom of the bag the juice.
Yep, just starts dripping out of the bag.
Yeah, that is like the most foul thing I could have ever imagined in my life. If it like splattered on me, I get really grossed out.
Yeah.
That's pretty bad.
Yeah.
But so that in a landfill, when you've got millions of bags of household garbage, it breaks down and all that juice kind of starts to collect, and it's called leachate, and it's a mixture of breakdown of trash and garbage and food scraps, and of course landfills are they're not covered up like a NFL stadium or anything like that, so they're getting rained on them, and depending on where you live, sometimes the rain really contributes a lot to how much landfill juice comes out of these things.
Yeah.
But we were talking about there was a landfill, like an example one in Vermont, I believe it was, that had 9.5 million gallons of this landfill juice a year that they had to pump out and take somewhere. And we're kind of thinking, I don't know how much that is. Let's put that in perspective.
Yeah. So we discovered that from wall to fill up an NFL stadium with just 1 inch of water, like the entire field, would take approximately only 36,000 gallons of water.
Which is a heck of a lot of water. That's almost like if you had a very large swimming pool at your house, most of those swimming pools are around that amount, about 40,000 gallons. But if you can imagine the NFL stadium, 1 inch, then try to imagine that same stadium with 22 feet deep of landfill juice, and that's how much an example landfill produces in leachate every single year. It's terrifying.
And these are rough numbers that we came up with because there's like so many numbers trailing behind the decimal I can see on the calculator, but still, that's a lot of land juice.
Ugh, that's terrible. So it's a lot of stuff that we just had a whole bunch of rain. We're going through storms in the East Coast right now, but when those storms come in Richmond, Richmond is famous for stormwater inundating their water treatment plant. And what they'll end up doing is, you've got not only do you have all the waste of all the sewer system, but now all of a sudden you've got this mixed in with all these heavy rains, and they can't process it all. So unfortunately, they seem to not have a choice. They'll actually do controlled releases into the James River of raw sewage. Wow. And they'll, of course, be fined for doing that, but That's really, in heavy rains, that's the only thing that they can do, which that's what keeps me from eating any fish out of the James River. But yeah, that whole the landfill juice thing just grosses the heck out of me. But
And so I wanted to ask this question to you. You had brought up in one of the segments earlier in the show that for a house filtration system, you can even have it filter the water that goes into your fridge, right?
Right. Yeah, there's a drinking water system. So not all drinking water systems can be connected to your refrigerator.
Right. Okay. So for the ones that can be connected to your fridge, and the fridges that do have the filters in them, how does that work? Does it bypass the filter or?
Yeah. So we get this question literally every single day. How is this going to impact the fridge filter? Because one of the obvious benefits is that what we end up doing is, instead of your fridge being connected to tap water, now we connect that refrigerator directly to a reverse osmosis drinking water system, like our Connecticut K5. And so if you can imagine, now all of a sudden your fridge has ideal water coming in. It doesn't need the filter anymore, and actually the filter becomes a hindrance because it slows the water down. Yeah, and kind of like what I was saying earlier, you don't want to leave a carbon filter like a refrigerator filter in for an extended amount of time, because the carbons in there, they do their job, but eventually they start to release the stuff that they've been holding on to.
Right.
So yeah, you're going to want to, no matter what, you're going to want to. So, some people actually have told me that they're just going to leave their fridge filter in indefinitely because it'll never wear out with good water coming in. And I said, no, don't do that. You're going to want to take that filter out of there, and one of two things is going to happen. One of three things. One of them I've never seen before, but I've heard that if you can take it out, and some weird fridges might actually leak if you don't put something back in that spot. I've never run into that, but it is a remote possibility. So if you take your filter out, definitely check it. Don't just leave the door shut and assume that everything is good. But most filters are inside the fridge. So you'll go ahead, take that filter out just like you were going to be doing a filter change, but don't put a filter back. Just close the little filter box up, close the door, and see if you can get water out of the dispenser. And if you can get water out of the dispenser, that means that your fridge has what we call an internal bypass, meaning it doesn't need a filter. It will automatically reroute that water around where the filter was.
Got it.
Yeah. And
okay.
The other option, because some fridges don't have that, and there's some certain brands and model years that you really don't know for sure, but some of them require what's called a filter bypass plug. And sometimes it literally is just a plug that goes in there in that hole where the filter popped into, and it just takes the water in and shoots it right back out in a little plastic tube. Or some of them kind of look like a filter. In that case, they're literally just a filter that's hollow. There's nothing in it. Water comes in and goes right back out. But if anybody on the phone is sitting there scratching your head going, I wonder which one I have, this is what we do. A little trick in the field that we do is I open up the fridge door. Every single fridge has a nameplate on the inside of it, right on that, right inside the door. And that nameplate is really informative because not only does it have your model number and your serial number, it's got the manufacturer's name and it has their phone number. So if you're listening to this Monday through Friday, or if you want to just remember, because most of those fridge people aren't open on the weekends, if you want to open your fridge up and just ask the person at the other end of the phone, hey, if I'm going to hook my fridge up to a drinking water system, do I need a filter bypass, or does mine just work without it? And you can ask the tech people from that manufacturer. Doesn't cost anything. and they'll be able to tell you if you need one. And if you need one, they'll either give you an option to just buy one over the phone, which is a nice proactive approach, because hopefully you'll be on the phone with us if you hadn't already, to go ahead and get yourself hooked up to a purifier. They could either sell you one, have it shipped right to your house. It'll be the last filter you'll ever need. Yeah, or they'll give you the part number, and you can usually go to an appliance store or online, and you might be able to find it quicker, cheaper, just not officially a genuine one. But at that point, as long as it doesn't leak, you're pretty safe.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a great question. We get that a lot, and there's everything from the basic fridges from Home Depot and Lowe's all the way to the high end Sub-Zero models. We do a lot of those, and most of the higher end ones, they've switched over to the ones that you just basically pull the filter out and everything is good.
Gotcha.
Yeah, great question about that. Since you asked a question about the accessories, so our Kinetico K5 is different from the other ones that are out there because it has a hydraulic delivery. It stores the purified water in a tank, and instead of using air pressure to shove it out and onto the house, it actually uses the outside of the tank. There's no air in our tanks. It's got a special bag that holds the drinking water, and then on the outside there's an area that when you want water, it will send your regular water around the bag and basically use your own water to squeeze the bag. So,
oh wow, okay.
Hopefully I said that in such a way that it makes sense. But if you can imagine a Ziploc bag with a hole in it, and you're going to fill that Ziploc bag with good water, if you were to take your hands and grab that Ziploc bag and squeeze it, you can go ahead, and depending on how hard you squeeze, depends how forcefully you're going to get that water to shoot out of that hole. Gotcha. So that's how our Kinetico K5 works, which is important because, well, two things, because we try to not put them in underneath the kitchen sink, but sometimes we just don't have a choice. So a lot of times we can put them remotely, either in a crawl space or a basement or in a garage. And the hydraulic, because it's so strong, we can actually put these things. We've actually put them 100 feet away from a kitchen before, and it's pretty crazy. It'll squeeze that water and push it out to almost wherever you want to go, as long as you're not going up, a couple of stories or something crazy like that.
Right.
And we've done that in a few houses. You just have a little bit less pressure upstairs, but it'll still do it. But yeah, we have a special fridge connection that once we put that in your line, we will have no problems running the refrigerator. And fridges are a little finicky because they're, when you hit the little paddle to give yourself some drinking water at the fridge, there's this little electric valve that's called a solenoid that uses an electric current to go ahead and open itself. And then when you're done getting water, it'll close the valve. Well, that little valve likes instantaneous water flowing through it. So we have a special little Kinetico fridge attachment that we have found is very effective at making sure that we don't run into any issues with any greedy little solenoids. But once you have that, we can hook up multiple refrigerators. Some people have a fridge in the in the bar, in the garage, in the basement, and as long as we can get to it, we can hook up to an unlimited number of refrigerators.
That's nice.
Yeah, super cool. So it your fridge filter savings can be doubled, tripled.
Whatever number of fridges you have.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's that, and then you can also run like almost an unlimited number of faucets.
Okay.
So we have a lot of folks that are on a single level with a crawl space or a basement underneath it, and they want perfect drinking water in the kitchen, but they also want it in one of the master bedrooms. And they don't want to buy another unit, obviously, because it's kind of cost prohibitive to do that unless you just have to. And we a lot of times can run that extra line down there and put a whole separate faucet in the master, so you don't have to walk back into the kitchen if you wake up thirsty.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty good stuff there. Again, you can visit us at ConnecticutRichmond.com if you want some more information. Just look for the K5. Just to remember, you're going to Connecticut Richmond, which starts with a K, and you're going to look for the K5 system. We've got a whole bunch of information on all of our things. We don't keep things secret because we're in the business of helping people with getting better water. So if you have secrets, then it slows us helping people down. But you can always call the team here. We've got a total of 8 people, about to be 9, probably next week, and all of us are dedicated to making sure that we can improve everybody's drinking water, as well as their whole house water, which we haven't really talked about that except for back on episode 1 with hardness and a little bit of chlorine. But on the next episode, we're gonna definitely dive in a lot deeper on some cool things that nobody else is really good at dealing with, like silica.
Oh wow!
Yeah, silica's that's one of those that it takes it. It's definitely a benefit to have. So I should back up and say Advanced Water Systems, which the Richmond office is one of our 12 offices that goes down into Georgia. I know I already said that earlier, but that's powerful because we have over, I believe it's 140 total employees.
Oh, wow.
Throughout all the different locations. Some of us are, we've got some expertise, mechanical engineering. We've got a master's and PhD in geology. We've got all sorts of credentials that are definitely helpful, and we like to share information with our other offices. So I'm glad I brought this up, because there's actually 2 companies in this viewing area or listening area that in the last month have apparently gone out of business. And we know that because we're getting a lot of phone calls from people, and they're saying, "Hey, I got my system from blah blah blah," and they're not answering the phone. And when you're a one-man show or a 2-man show operating out of your house, and you decide you want to retire or you want to move or something happens in your life and you're just done, that's it. All your customers are left hanging. But with us, I like to halfway joke around that if the hurricane gets all the way over to Richmond, our Raleigh and our Chesapeake office are going to go sweep back in here and rebuild. No matter what, everybody's taken care of long term.
Absolutely.
Cool. Well, that's. I did mention that you get your special Paul Crazy Boomtown 10%. Yeah. However you want to mention it, just mention Crazy Paul.
Go ahead and throw it in again.
Yeah, you get 10% off on a Connecticut drinking water system.
Awesome.
And that's a heck of a deal. You're gonna love it. And you can't see this on the radio, but everybody that gets one of our Connecticut drinking water systems gets a really cool. It's a 40-ounce insulated flask.
I was looking at that earlier. That's a cool looking bottle.
I brought
like that.
Yeah, I brought it here just to make you notice that one, but it's been custom engraved. So this, kind of like the Connecticut, was the last one you're ever going to need. Oh. And we have a new kids size that we're working on for all the parents out there. So, well, we're about out of time here. I am Paul, your Connecticut Water Guy. Thanks for listening, and join us next Saturday morning for another edition of the Water Guy Show.
You've been listening to the Connecticut Water Guy Hour. Join us next week for another edition with Paul, your Connecticut Water Guy. Opinions expressed on the program may not necessarily reflect the views of station management and ownership. Portions